UMC Operation Community, Berea United Methodist Church Operation Community. And tonight's keynote speaker is Dr. Sue Reimondo. Let's welcome Sue to be with us tonight. Sue is the Director of Counseling Services at Berea College, where she has been for about 20 years, am I right?
21 years.
And we are glad to have you. We are really looking forward to your presentation tonight. As always, we are looking to have those windows for us to see through the window, because we are a church. So our approach is missional. We want to hear what we hear, and we want to see what we can see, so that we can see if there is an opportunity to launch a ministry or reach out with a helping hand, or prayers, or many other ways, putting out the ministry. So this is what we are looking. There's an empty sheet of paper, at least one at every table. So there will be two questions again that you may want to reflect upon. What might be the biblical connection? What might be the biblical connection about this, what you are hearing tonight, as you listen to Sue? And then what about the practical application? Ideas, thoughts, for us as a Berea UMC. Okay. And we are thankful for Sue and Phyllis and Danny and Richard, who were involved in this food business tonight. Let's throw our appreciation to them. Delicious soup and very good soup. So let's have a prayer, and then we let Sue loose, okay?
Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, we have come together tonight to see through the window that Dr. Reimondo is about to offer to us. And Lord, help us to see you, and help us to hear your voice, and help us to be thoughtful, and help us to see people around us, their needs, their longing, and all that they are. They are created by you, and they have a wonderful plan and purpose for their life. And Lord Jesus, we are so thankful that we can be right in this place as a church, as a friends, learning and hearing and listening what you are about to share with us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Please.
Okay, so I think this is, all right, is this on? Is it working?
Did you turn the,
Oh, you have to turn it on. How clever.
right by the, right there, there should be a little.
Oh, there it is, it's on. Okay, you can hear me now. Okay, yes. I am a therapist, not at all very good at technology, so. But again, thank you for the warm welcome. A little bit more about me. I appreciate the introduction, but I think it's important to understand, you know, I'm a clinician. I'm not a professor. I don't teach in the psychology department. My love is working directly with clients. And I've been at Berea College for 21 years as the Director of Counseling Services. When I started, it was myself and a part-time director. I now have 6 therapists that report to me, and we're a standalone clinic, so we've grown exponentially. Many of you know about Berea College, the mission of Berea College, so we serve students who come from socioeconomic backgrounds where they have limited opportunities, limited resources. Typically that comes with also a lot more mental health challenges. Growing up in poverty without resources, or being raised by parents who might have addiction issues, again, lack of resources. I could go on and on about that. It's also important to know that at our clinic, we see 35 to 40% of the students in any given year. Okay, that's a huge usage rate for any college or university. My colleagues at other institutions find that hard to believe. And none of it's mandated. These are students who feel that they need some help with their mental health issues and challenges. and many go untreated that we would like to reach. So again, that is a very high percentage. So I probably have about 3 presentations trying to wrap up in this one. So we'll go along and see how it goes. But I'll pause and see if I'm on the right track in terms of what information would be most helpful to share with you. I do have some statistics, but I also, I love what I do, so I want to pass on information that could help us, or skill sets that could help all of us address our mental health needs, as well as those we love and care about. Okay? So that's kind of what I'll be talking about today. Okay, so basically the topic is, our mental health challenges in older teens and young adults. That's the population that I know most about, and have spent my career serving. I love this population. They're young enough where I think that they are open to change, open to new ideas, and a lot of difficulties happen in childhood. We all develop coping skills based on, even if we had great parents, most of us do have some coping strategies that we used as children that aren't effective anymore. So now you bring these children, or these young adults, out of a very chaotic, perhaps, family life, and they really have some coping strategies that aren't working well at all once they're in a college setting, and particularly a residential setting. But they're also incredibly resilient, smart, funny, they're wonderful. Okay, so just some statistics. Things have gotten substantially worse since COVID in terms of the mental health crisis across the country, and our college-age students, young adults are no exception. We're seeing more mental health issues in even younger children. 13, 14 students, they're committing suicide. They're feeling incredibly bullied and so forth in schools. There's lots going on. So again, 70% of public schools reported increase in demand for mental health services since the start of COVID. 34% increase in demand for those that are economically disadvantaged students. 25% increase of students with special needs. This is coupled with a very insufficient staff availability and to manage caseload. If any of you have attempted to start with a therapist, most therapists, even locally, are not taking new clients. Their demand is just, it's skyrocketed, since COVID, it is very difficult for me to hire new staff at the salaries we pay at Berea, because they can make so much more money elsewhere. And I'm talking even those, after you finish your education, and then you have practicum hours or internship hours, then it takes about 2 years of experience before you can sit for your license. I can't even pay those waiting for their license enough or needing the experience to stay at Berea College. I mean, it's phenomenal what COVID did. So in addition to COVID, though, we certainly see that it exacerbated focusing. The students can't focus as well. They're feeling very lonely and isolated, and it's persisted. Even though students are back on campus, it's almost like they forgot how their social skills. How do I reconnect? Also, do I need to be poised to be told we have to leave campus again at any minute? Because COVID hasn't gone away, as many of you who are wearing masks, and no. So, and they were isolated from their peers, which is a very significant part of friendship networks and support networks at this point in their life. Also, we're seeing academic progress. After 2 years of cobbled together pandemic learning, students are less prepared and have forgotten how to be students. It's very interesting, our developmental math folks, because many students come in with deficient skills in math, so we have a developmental math series. And the college has had to add a substantial number of sections of developmental math than ever before, because these students are so behind in math skills. So many more students are so behind. Students are grieving missed experiences and opportunities. I didn't get to go to my prom, no graduation ceremony, so on and so forth. And I think this is really pertinent to all of us. Most of us feel a loss of sense of control and self-efficacy, meaning, I have a problem, I can take action and solve it. We couldn't do much about COVID, right? You know, we were isolated, stay home, wear your mask, you know, wash your hands frequently. There was so much that we didn't know about COVID, and that loss of control is very difficult for human beings. We don't like that. And then, of course, we have elevated levels of distress, anxiety, and depression, clearly skyrocketing. The number one reason is for students presenting at counseling services, college students for mental health services, or that they present. What's their complaint? Number one reason.
Anxiety. Depression?
What?
Depression.
That's number two.
Anxiety.
Anxiety is number one. And think about it, Berea College is really stressful. You can't go part-time at Berea College. You can't drop out and say, I'll come back, right? Because your tuition is paid, so it makes a big difference. It's very interesting. And at Berea College Plus, you're required to work and required to go to condos, on top of taking a full class load every semester. And typically at least 1 or 2 summers to make sure you graduate on time. Because if it's going to take you more than 8 semesters to graduate, you have to apply for extension of terms. Berea is stressful. And then we have these environmental stressors, all right? You know, is anybody very happy with our political climate? I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, yeah, it's stressful. It's horrifying sometimes. Race relations in the U.S., you know, police brutality, very frightening for our students, particularly our students in college. They don't want to leave campus. They're afraid. The impact of social media, we can't say enough about that. Most of us are older and we realize, wow, you know, this fixation with Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, I don't even know the names of all of them. I know Dara's laughing because I'm old and I think, oh my gosh, it sucks your time up. But, you know, comparison is the thief of happiness, as Brene Brown says. And that's all social media does. You know, who posts their worst moments on Facebook? Nobody. Who posts a picture where you don't look very flattering? Nobody. So you post all these exciting experiences you're having, all this fun you're having, all your friend experience, and you think that that's their whole life, and then you're sitting here looking like, I'm having a bad hair day, my boss yelled at me, right? You don't post that stuff. Rarely. Yeah. I have one member of my team, he's like, he takes himself off Facebook because he gets so distressed. He thinks his life is miserable compared to everybody else on Facebook. Yeah. And then we have environmental concerns. You know, is the planet even going to be sustainable when I have children? Very scary, very real to our students. And then there's economic concerns. The American dream is no longer seen as a reality among our students. Our students are afraid, am I going to really get a job? You know, a college degree doesn't mean much in today's economy. They're scared. So college graduation is no longer a guarantee of success. Many students graduate and are underemployed. I want to switch now to also the physiology of the students in this age group. Okay, now remember I work mostly with some 17-year-olds, but 18 to 25. Okay, so the amygdala is the last part of the brain is the first part of the brain to develop. Okay, when you're born, that's the reptilian brain back here. It's the most primitive because that part of your brain is all about survival. It is all about survival. So it is fight, flight, freeze. Okay, that is what the amygdala. Okay, so and it is in charge all through the teen years. Your brain does not fully develop until your mid-20s. So you look around and you're like, you look at that 19-year-old and go, what were you thinking? Well, their logic system is perfectly appropriate for a 19-year-old. You're like, help me understand again why you thought going 125 miles down Chestnut Street at 3 in the morning was a good idea. Well, there's not that many people on the road then, and I really wanted to see how fast. It makes sense to them. They don't understand that, you know, the sophisticated logic system that we hope we have. And so we have a lot of brain remodeling happening during adolescence. It's also really interesting. You know, again, I think it's very interesting the way God wired us or made us, because I think, you know, I read a great article that said, if that wasn't the case, young people would never leave the nest. They have to take foolish chances. They have to learn their limits. Or they would just stay safe and would never leave home. I had a nephew, my sister, he graduated high school, he was living at home, and he would have lived there forever. My sister went out and found 3 apartments. You pick one because you're not staying here. I mean, he needed a little launch, okay. So this prefrontal cortex is the last to be remodeled, okay? But that's our executive control center where we have some good, more sophisticated, let's say, judgment and decision making, okay? So here we have these interesting, I mean, sometimes these 19-year-olds, I'm like, okay. It's fascinating though to get into the logic system of other people. Wow. You know, I see how that makes sense according to your logic system, but wow, is that creative. Yeah, taking my t-shirt off and dancing on a table was a good idea. Okay, help me understand. All right, so here we are with these students to nest or launch, and they're going when? Oh, not yet. And it is not uncommon now, in stages of, Erickson's stages of development, many folks are familiar with his stages of development. You know, you go to adolescence to young adulthood, or to adulthood. There's theories now where there's a stage in between called young adulthood, where they're not quite ready to leave the nest. They're closer to 30 now when they're ready to leave the nest. I don't know if any of you have had kids who come back. You're like, I mean, I couldn't wait to leave at 18. You know, I couldn't wait to drive. I mean, I was driving before I was 16, you know, we all drove, yeah. You know how many of my students are terrified to drive? I don't get that. That is freedom. You know, you can always drive west when all else fails, you know, until you hit California. So we have this tension between these competing needs. Kids, and now we're talking young kids too, kids have a need for attachment. They need to know that they are safe. Okay, they need to know that somebody's caring for them. At the same time, they have a need for authenticity. Okay, so, and this is Gabor Mate, if you're familiar with his work at all. He's really interesting. But this tension is, okay, particularly if you grow up in a household where there's lots of rules, like you don't get a cookie unless you're good. You don't, you know, you do this, and there's a lot of conditions, so they learn to be inauthentic to preserve that attachment. Okay, that's a really simplistic, you know. So for example, and this is difficult depending on belief system, if a young person, this is a real drastic one, but is exploring their sexuality and may think, you know, I'm bi, you know, they have so, I don't need, the students have to tell me what this stuff means because there are so many categories right now. You know, and so, and how much patience do you have with that? How do we help them, guide them through that? Loving them, but maybe not their process. It's difficult. And I think, you know, young people are exposed to so many more ideas now. You know, I can't remember being 13 and anybody, I mean, you know, I'm sure, but the questioning that's happening now about all kinds of things, you know. So we want to help them explore who they are through their interests. They might try on different personas. You know, let's do the goth thing for a while. You know, let's do the tomboy thing for a while. I'm going to be a hippie and play guitar, you know, with the bucket on the corner, make money, all of that. Okay. Because, and many students, you know, and this vulnerable self-esteem, even students who seem like the perfect kid, they do well in school, they're well liked, they are an athlete, they're very vulnerable. Their self-esteem can be very vulnerable because they've always been such high achievers. It's too much. And when we hear of promising college students who commit suicide, gifted soccer player not too long ago was one. So again, we try to encourage those hobbies and creative outlets. We try to promote physical activities. We know the young people have a lot of energy. Is there any way to help them channel it appropriately in exploring healthy hobbies? Physical activity is so essential. And then also encourage help seeking. When I first started at Berea College, one of our main goals was to get over the stigma of seeking counseling services. Well, now we can't even meet demand. some people still have that stigma, but it's not like it used to be. It is not half, and that's good. But you know, when I say chat rooms, because there are some good ones out there where students find peer support or online support groups. You know, it doesn't always have to be a therapist. But of course, I think therapy's great. Just a little plug for my profession. But we have that, and also in this age group, there's this developmental need to detach from your family or parents as a child and reattach as an adult. So I have some students that they talk to their mom 3 times a day. They're really struggling to detach, or the mom cries every time they leave home, you know, or the dad, because they miss them. You know, so how can you facilitate that, you know, the detaching, or you know, today I had a student in my office in tears. Well, my family would be so disappointed if I don't get a job as soon as if I don't have one lined up on May 5th or the day after graduation. And yet she has a plan. She would rather have a job lined up for September 1st because she's getting married. She also has, her own little business that she can make enough money and do some other part-time work. And I'm like, well, that's up to you and your fiance to make that decision that you're going to be okay. And your parents may be disappointed or concerned, but that doesn't mean they disapprove of you. Does that make sense? I mean, a lot of our kids have a hard time with that are really close to family. Okay, so all of that, and if I'm going too fast, let me know, because I am from up north and I talk a mile a minute, I know. But, but when do we really become concerned? When we see a drastic change in behavior, particularly withdrawing from friends or family or favorite activities, they suddenly stay in their room all the time, they don't engage in activities, they don't play their guitar, they're not playing soccer, no, I don't want to. They drastically change their appearance, that can be sleeping a lot or very little, drastic changes in hygiene. But this lack of future orientation is really key. In other words, they don't express excitement about their future. They've lost, it's basically they lost a sense of hope when you hear little words that indicate, they're not excited about what's next. They're not hopeful that they'll get into college. They don't care anymore. And it's really important to check that out. And really asking the question, if you really feel like there's been these drastic changes in a young person, being willing to ask the question in some form, are you thinking of killing yourself? How many of you think you could ask somebody that question who seemed depressed? Okay, a few of you. How many would be like, well, that'd be really hard? Yeah, it is hard, it's uncomfortable. Number one, you're hoping they say no. Right. Would be the first thing. And I also hear, well, what if I give them that idea? You are not going to give them that idea. I promise you. If they have thought about suicide, they've thought about it without any prompting from you. What I've discovered over 30 years of being in this field is, it is a relief to be asked that question when you feel that bad. Because what it says is you took the time to notice how bad I'm feeling and are willing to sit and find out what's going on with me. And you have to ask, and you can find ways to ask it. I know when people are in this much pain, sometimes they think about killing themselves. Is that what you're thinking? I know when people are this discouraged, sometimes it seems like the only, option is suicide or to kill themselves or hurt yourself. Find a way to ask the question and create that space. And then you sit with them, don't panic. Because if they say yes, they're in front of you, they're not doing anything. Mm-hmm. You've just in that moment have instilled a little hope that somebody cares. And then take your time and help connect them to the resources that might be important. I'll go with you to a therapist. Let's call, it's before 5, let's call and see what we can do. I know a friend who might be able to help us. What do you need right now? What's your plan for tonight? Well, I'm going to go to my roommate and I are gonna go to dinner, and then I think I'm just gonna, take a nap. To try to get them to the resources, but it is scary, I get it. But I can't tell you how much relief it is when that question is asked, and they realize that somebody cares, and they're not crazy, they're not going through it alone, they're not being dismissed. It's really important. Okay. I also, now I'm kind of switching. First of all, any questions about what I've said so far? Are we okay on time? Yes?
My question, I think, is do you feel that some of the anxiety and depression issues might be because there's lack of faith in students, like the students don't go to church as much as they did, or what you might have seen them 20 years ago?
Yeah, I do. I think because connecting because this was part of my dissertation. Connecting students. What is a therapist? What's the goal of a therapist? I hope, and I made the argument that we are to help them reconnect to a belief system. I don't want them dependent on me, and God knows they don't want me to be their belief system, right? No, no, and I think that, and studies show that faith, connecting with something bigger than ourselves, is very, very key to happiness, and I have slides about that as well. How do we cultivate happiness? But I do think that faith plays a big role, and I'm not the one to determine what that faith looks like, but let's think about that together. Yeah, but I also think that, and over the years, and this makes me sound really old, I know, but young people cannot tolerate any discomfort. Everything's instant. Students, they won't, I have so many students who will not, we'll refer them. It's like, I think maybe you would benefit from some medical advice. They have White House Clinic, okay, access to health care that's paid for. They'll go, well, can I text for an appointment? I'm like, no, you have to call. They don't want to call. That's uncomfortable to make a phone call and interact. They are so wanting, to minimize any discomfort. Can you imagine? Yeah. So I think, learning to tolerate discomfort, but it's really necessary for personal growth. I work with a lot of students, It's like, you want to change is going to be uncomfortable because you're used to doing it. I don't know, let's use any example. Say you golf. And you taught yourself, and you finally go to a golf lesson, and the instructor's trying to say, you need to change your golf swing. It's hard. And it's like, no, it works pretty well. I get it pretty much if you want to get better, you got to change your golf swing. It is hard, okay? So having them, but it's also exciting. We want to encourage that. What's a personal challenge that's within your scope of ability? I'm not going to be able to sing I'm not even going to be able to sing a hymn well, but maybe I could learn to sing something okay. That's a bad example. But what are your challenges? What do you want to learn? What is your personal growth opportunities? And then also, it's okay if you don't have immediate positive impact. Okay, if I take up something new. Oh, okay, I'm going to take up knitting. Okay, I've never knit. Am I going to knit a perfect scarf? Am I going to have to tear out stitches probably? Yeah. So if I'm not immediately good at it, I just give it up. That is not uncommon. It's like that persistence factor is not always there. So, encourage them to explore these new experiences, new food, a new activity. I co-taught a class. I don't typically teach, but sometimes I get invited to teach. I co-taught a class. And for some reason, we had Mexican food, And a student looked at that and said, that don't look like nothing my mama ever made. Wouldn't touch it. I have students who go abroad. I starved. I couldn't find a McDonald's in Paris. Right? Yeah. And then get comfortable with discomfort in social settings. You know, students are staying in their rooms rather than engaging with each other. Or if they do, okay, students could be, say this was a study area. And, okay, instead of talking, you two, you're texting. Students do that, yeah. 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 You can see how I feel about having a phone in your hand at all times. Okay. And get comfortable being different. I tell students, gosh, really, you want to go through life being vanilla? How fun is that? How fun is that? Embrace standing out instead of fitting in. You're a unique individual. You weren't here to be like everybody else on this planet. You know, get curious, ask questions. You know, make a list of 5 activities you really like to do that would make you uncomfortable. And that could be as simple as, I'm going to wear red lipstick today. I am going to go and sit at a different table in food service. I don't care. You know, we can all benefit from that when we get in ruts, right? Do something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable, you know, so you can expand your world. And learn that discomfort isn't lethal. It's not lethal. I mean, I've been at social gatherings where I felt extremely uncomfortable. I mean, people think I'm an extrovert, but if I don't know anybody, you know, it's really hard for me to just go up and chit-chat a lot of times, you know. I mean, I've run out of many of a room, conferences especially. When you go to professional conferences and I didn't go with a colleague, ugh, thank God for wine. That's all I'm saying. Live with courage. And here, you know, I thought this might be interesting to go over. I do this is an excerpt from a presentation I do a lot. And it's a book. I have it. The Upside of Stress, and the woman who wrote it is Kelly McGonigal. And she's a social psychologist, health psychologist, excuse me. And so for years, she taught that stress is bad. How many of you believe stress is going to cause a heart attack, high blood pressure, you know, a nervous breakdown? Yeah, okay. Well, Kelly McGonigal started studying people who are really happy, they're stressed. And then people who are really struggling with stress. So what's different? Okay, so I love this quote. If you have butterflies in your stomach, invite them into your heart. Because that is just your body and your brain getting ready to do something that's challenging. So basically, there's 2 stress mindsets. Stress is bad for you. Bad for your health, bad for your performance, bad for your learning and growth. And so stress should be avoided at all costs because it's negative. And then there's another mindset that says stress enhances my performance. You know, if I'm a little bit stressed, for example, I spent a lot of time preparing this, right? Because I wanted it to be, well, first I wanted to sound like I know what I'm talking about, but secondly, I wanted it to be helpful to all of you. And it improves my health and vitality. I'm engaging in something I care about. It helps my learning and growth. You know, I don't do this a lot, get asked to come out in communities and speak. So, but I learn and grow from this experience. You know, it's wonderful. It was I considered it an honor when I was asked, a wonderful opportunity. And so we should really utilize the positive of stress, because there is that excitement to light side. Okay, so where did stress get its bad reputation? Hungarian endocrinologist, 1936, Hans Selye. Anyone familiar with his work? Okay. Well, he experimented with rats. He exposed them to extreme heat or cold. He forced them to exercise without rest. He blasted them with noise. He gave them toxic drugs. He partially severed their spinal cords. Within 48 hours, they lost their muscle tone, developed ulcers, and their immune systems failure, then they died. Well, what do you think would happen? Right? What do you think would happen? How many of us are forced to exercise without rest? How many of us have had our spinal cord severed deliberately? How many of us are taking toxic drugs without our consent? Right? Yeah. Now, there is a difference between trauma and stress, violence and abuse, so I want to make that clear. But Selye defines stress so broadly that it includes just about everything that happens to us. Everything. Anything negative that elevates our blood pressure is bad, bad, bad. So by his 1970s, he came up with the term eustress, which means good stress, but the damage was done. Stress got a bad name. So the fight or flight response is an instinct present in all of us, okay? And it was really important when we were hunter and gatherers, okay? And remember the brain I was telling you about? Fight, flight, freeze, undeveloped part of the brain? You want that when it's time to run out of a burning building. You don't want to go, I wonder if somebody burned the pancakes. I wonder, no, I want you to go, oh, I see smoke, I smell fires getting high, let's get out of here. Yes, how many of us have had to run out of burning buildings? Some, maybe not everybody, but yes, it's a mismatch. You know, when you're a hunter-gatherer and you hear a rustle in the grass, you don't want to go, oh, that could be the wind. Maybe it's my friend. I want you to go, it's a tiger, and you either get your spear ready or you run. Right? Yeah, or play dead. I guess if that's a bear, that works sometimes. I don't know. But again, the fight response, it is an antiquated response to stress. In 99.9% of the cases of the situations we face on a day-to-day basis. Just what is, yeah. It was great for our ancestors, not so good for us. Not so good for us. So it's wasting our energy and getting in the way of successful coping. So, let me ask all of you this. Let's get some audience participation. I want you to think of the last thing that you did that was super stressful, that you accomplished in spite of it being super stressful.
Public speaking.
Okay, so what did you do to get ready, you know? How did you manage that stress and do it?
I just kept going over what I had to say, and it became a second nature.
Did you have friends listen to it?
Yes.
Okay, did you practice, maybe in front of a mirror, but with friends? Okay, good. Other examples. But when you did it, how did you have any physical?
Oh, yes. All the blood ran out of my head. I shook a lot, and it was like the tiger in the grass you mentioned.
Right. But did you get through it?
Yes.
Did you faint?
No, I didn't faint.
Wow, yes. That's an important point. Okay, any other
Working
example?
with someone you don't like.
Okay, you work with somebody you don't like.
How do you deal with it if you don't like them?
Oh, how do
I
you?
mean, my way of doing it is don't talk to them.
Okay, if you can avoid, because what's the point of confronting? That's your problem solving. Because you probably want to hit them. I mean, instinctively, it would be good to just kill them off. Like, you know, maybe our forefathers did, right? You just kill them off. Well, you can't do that in today's world. But you could avoid and minimize contact with them. It doesn't mean it's not stressful. But yeah. And then do you surround yourself, or do you, and you also do you, like, kibitz a little bit about that person to other people who don't like him or her?
Yeah, generally.
Yeah!
Generally.
Yeah!
You try to avoid it, but it comes out.
It comes out, yeah. You're trying to minimize your complaining, but yeah. Okay, good example. Others? Yes?
Job interviews.
Job interviews. Okay, so how do you manage a job interview?
Well, it's been a long time.
Okay, how would you coach a person, young professional getting ready for a real important job interview?
Well, you need to prepare.
Okay?
Being prepared will take a lot of the stress out of it.
And how do you prepare? Let's help her out. How would you prepare for a job interview?
Role play.
Role play good?
Background check.
Back.
Like checking out the place you're employed.
Yes, some research.
Research, yeah.
Yes. I know, I was hiring for a disabilities coordinator, somebody to help. You know, one of the candidates asked me, what's ADA? Thank you, which is the American with Disabilities Act. You can't be in disabilities without knowing what ADA is, right? He didn't get far in the interview process, right? Yes, you do some research. You prepare, you role play. Now, when you actually go to the interview, are you gonna feel calm, cool, collected, no problem? No, great examples. Yes, but what we're saying is the challenge response. This is important to me. It's gonna be a challenge, I really want that job. You know, there's gonna be other qualified candidates, but I'm up for the challenge. And to make sure I'm up for the challenge, I'm gonna role play with friends. You know, so I don't hit that person I don't like at work. I'm gonna vent a little to other colleagues and find out what strategies they have for avoiding them and see if collectively we can get them fired. Right? It could happen. Start keeping good notes about, yeah, hey, I don't think it's a bad idea. Okay, you're gonna, and then also learn and grow. Okay, maybe I didn't get this job, but I know a lot more about how to interview well next time. I'm more prepared for questions I didn't anticipate I would be asked. Right? Yeah, learn and grow response. So these are really what we want to focus on rather than fight, flight, freeze. Oh, college students, okay, they're not doing well, and we'll just pick history, right? So they have an assignment due. So instead of turning it, they started it, it's not good enough, they don't turn it in. Or, and then what happens? Okay, now they're behind. They didn't talk to the professor. The next assignment comes due. Now they're like, I can't even go to class, I'm too embarrassed. So, 3 weeks of missing that class, they'll come to me and go, I think I'm in trouble. I'm like, I'm a decent therapist, but I'm not a magician, and we cannot make up for it. Yeah, avoidance, love. We all love avoidance, Bills pile, adults, their bills are piling up. Well, I just won't open them. Okay, that's a good strategy. That's a good strategy, right? Yeah, we love avoidance.
What about routine?
What about it?
If you have the same routine every day and it's broken, do you ever get questions on that?
That where they don't like that?
Yeah, like a change or a routine, like you're doing everything the same thing and all of a sudden something different happens.
Yeah, some people they really thrive on routine, yeah. But that's an inflexibility. How many of us, life gets in the way, okay, like for example, okay, here's an example of a routine. So, you're always on time, you have a job, and so you're driving, and there's a really important meeting that starts at 9, you left in plenty of time, but you get a flat tire. Okay, what are you gonna do?
Call the person I'm having a meeting
Call
with.
the people you're supposed to meet.
That would be a good idea.
For your business.
Yeah, or drive on a flat tire, which could cause more problems, or, or you got, right. Yeah, or you make it, yes, you cry, you pound the steering wheel, this isn't fair. That is not a helpful response. Now, I think, having a mini temper tantrum in that situation is probably reasonable, but then you gotta problem solve, right? Yeah, that's great. So these physical symptoms we talked about, butterflies, sweaty palms, blood rushing out of my head, shaking, that is your body and brain saying, we're getting ready to do something that is challenging, and we are on it. You're not gonna make those symptoms disappear. That is not how this works. Sweaty palms mean you're close to something you want. Butterflies are a reminder of what matters. Oh, when you first dated, and you got those butterflies because you want to make a good impression. Yeah, it matters. And oh boy, if anyone has struggled with anxiety, how helpful it is, just breathe.
If somebody else says that to you?
Yeah. You're very anxious, you're really stressed, and somebody says, it's not a big deal, just breathe.
Yeah.
No, right, I want to rip out the trachea. My young therapists are like, oh, I teach them breathing exercises. I'm like, you're lucky you still have a head, because those kids could, no, that doesn't help. It doesn't help. Now learning, put that energy to use, to just say, no, your anxiety is your friend. Now, we just want to dial it back so it doesn't overwhelm you, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It's just trying to get you prepared. Let's just dial it back a little bit. Make friends with that anxiety, put it to good use. They respond to that much better, much better. And I have a lot of students with like mathic phobia. Oh my gosh, yeah. And then I also ask, what choice or action is consistent with my goal at the moment? Pounding the steering wheel because I have a flat tire, crying because bad things always happen to me, is not. What matters is, this is reasonable. I'm really disappointed. I know that people came from out of state or from headquarters to hear this presentation. I'm gonna call, and I have my computer in the back seat. I can forward my presentation to Becky, my coworker, until I can get there. Right? And in the meantime, I can call an Uber, I can, whatever you need to do. You problem solve. And then of course, reframe preparation as learning opportunities like practice interviews. Boy, you can practice anything now. You can look up typical interview questions. You can look up, anything about, that can help you prepare. And then remind yourself, I'm adequate to the challenge and always learning. My sister, I have 3 sisters, and one lives in Pennsylvania. I live here, and one lived in North Carolina. The sister in North Carolina was really afraid to drive by herself to Pennsylvania. And then my sister in Pennsylvania, and now she's in her 40s at this point, and she's driven all her life. And my sister Amy said, people stupider than you do this every day. Right? You are up for the challenge. There's no reason you can't drive to Pennsylvania. I know that's kind of harsh, but isn't that funny? I know, I love that story. But it helped. Lori got in her car and drove to Pennsylvania. So what's the cost of avoiding stress? What happens if we set our lives up to minimize stress as much as possible? What is our life going to look like? Boring?
Yeah.
Boring? Yeah? What else?
Empty.
Empty. Huh.
You'll never know what new great things are out there waiting for you.
Yes. Oh, you guys, this is a wise group. College students aren't so wise, but you're right. Missed opportunities. It's interesting. If I look at my life, it is the things I didn't do that I regret the most. Like, wow, why didn't I study abroad when I was in college? Why didn't I take that trip when I had the chance? Why didn't I accept that new job even though I was leery about it when somebody encouraged me to apply for it, right? Yeah. And then half the time I'm like, man, things really turned out, but boy, that was hard. Like, had I known, how hard it was good. Sometimes I think I'd done stuff because I was too stupid to know better, but it turned out. And then in the middle I found out it was hard. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Oh, we talk about avoidant coping. What escapes do we turn to? This could be substances, we drink too much, or, our students. Boy, what's popular really now on campus are gummies, marijuana gummies. And yeah, they're really popular. And some it's really difficult to know exactly what's in those, so some students have really bad reactions to them. Or they seem real benign. I mean, it looks like a lifesaver or a gumdrop, or they come in or a little chocolate. So they look really benign, and you're supposed to eat like half of one, and somebody really hasn't had a lot of experience. It's like, oh, I don't smoke pot. They'll have an edible, and then they have a terribly paranoid reaction. Yeah. So what are we trying to get rid of? What are we trying to numb ourselves to? Avoidant coping. And it definitely limits your future. Gosh, I can't believe I got the job at Berea College. It was a long shot because I had just gotten my license in Kentucky. I didn't have a lot of, I worked for IBM before, my career, but I worked for IBM before, so I had a lot of management experience, but not in college and not in this field. But I got the job, yeah. So what is the cost of not allowing yourself to pursue some of these opportunities and chances? You never know. And so I see so many of my students living small lives. I can't go study abroad, my boyfriend won't like it. Get a new boyfriend. Your partners should never make your life smaller. I tell students all the time, never. They want you to grow and be all you can be. Yeah, they'll be lonely for 3 months. They'll get over it. You know? Gosh. Okay. Now I'm shifting gears. Are we done? I mean, I'm going on a lot. Are we okay? This is my last meaty slide because now I'm switching to, when we think about our young people, ourselves, certainly understanding where they are developmentally is really important. That they are really facing a lot of negative life experiences in the world is really pretty scary right now. And also, tolerating distress, including stress, is really difficult for our students. But here is a slide. This is a ton of research on positive psychology, but here's 2 of my favorites. Our capacity for happiness, we can cultivate happiness. Genetics determines about 50% of our happiness level. I mean, do any of you know, like, people who are just annoyingly happy all the time? My best friend was just a happy apple off the tree. I mean, I love her, but wow. She got the jackpot on the genetics. And her parents say that she just came out that way. Robin was always like a happy kid. I'm like, wow. And then, of course, circumstances, sex, ethnicity, or income, 10%. That's it. And we are terrible at predicting what's going to make us happy. When I make 60 grand, a year, or 100 grand, or 250, that'll make me happy. It doesn't. We habituate to that. When I get my first Cadillac, Ferrari, we don't. We habituate. When I get to go to the Riviera, we don't. Most of us don't travel like that. And even if we do, oh, I'm sorry. It's probably my husband because he forgets my schedule all the time. Oh, it isn't. Okay, well, here we go. He might remember my schedule. Yeah, no, that doesn't make us happy, because we habituate to that. But now savoring, you save up and you get that, that trip to Hawaii and really savoring that's really important. Like savoring those experiences, really understanding the meaning of those, connecting, celebrating my anniversary with my 25th anniversary with my husband in Hawaii. My sister-in-law just did that with my brother. Which getting my brother off of Willard Street, Jamestown, New York is a feat in itself, let alone Hawaii. Yeah, yeah. Are you a homebody?
No, I'm from Buffalo.
Oh!
I know Jamestown.
You do? That's where I was born. Half my relatives live in Buffalo. Small world. Okay. But then we have intentional activity that attributes to 40% of our capacity for happiness. If we had control over 40% of anything, we'd be thrilled. But that is being intentional about our behavioral choices, what we choose to think about. Like I can let that, and I have, being a manager, boy, in 21 years, if you think I've loved every therapist that has worked for me, I gave a really good recommendation to one and said, I think this is a perfect job for you, and hallelujah. Yeah. But yeah, so, our thinking patterns, our behavioral choices, intentional activity. Happiness, think about it. If you had to name 5 things you're grateful for just today, what would you name? 5 things. You enjoyed cooking dinner for everyone? Nice.
Being alive.
Being good? Okay.
Sunshine.
Sunshine, yep.
Bubbles.
Family.
I got to blow bubbles for the sunshine friends.
Blow bubbles? Great. It is the minutia. It's a really good sip of coffee the first thing in the morning. Or if you go to get, I went to a coffee shop in Louisville this weekend, and you know how you order like a cappuccino, has a little heart in the foam?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so sweet. Made my day. Loved it. It's seeing a daffodil, it's seeing the crocuses. It's my husband saying thank you. It's, my favorite blanket I curl up under after a shower, Yeah, that's the minutia, that's what makes us happy. It isn't money, it certainly isn't our cell phones. It is human interaction, it's connection. It's being down here, it's being connected, meaning serving some purpose that is larger than oneself. Like Dara asked, what about our spiritual? That's, do we feel connected to something bigger than ourselves? And also our accomplishment, pursuit of achievement and mastery. My dad wanted me to be an engineer. Okay, because back then there were hardly any female engineers. I'm about as equipped to be an engineer as I am to be an astronaut. It's just no, And he was horrified that I went into, psychology or whatever, business first or whatever. But I feel good. I feel like I have the ability or what it takes to be a good therapist. And I love the field. I'm always wanting to learn more. I mean, it's not for everybody. Relationships that are positive, nurturing, rewarding. Attend to our relationships. And again, it's not a text message. It's a text should be, this is my opinion, should be informational. Let's meet at 6 at Papalino's, right? I'm running late. Hey, I'm thinking about you, let's get together. It's hard to do relationship when we're not spending time one-on-one or picking up the phone or really taking the time. We send texts because we don't have to engage in a conversation. Like, I've been guilty of that. When I miss my friend in Texas, I'll just send her a text because I know we'll be on the phone for 2 hours. No. Yeah. Oops. Yeah, and being engaged, like, how many of you have ever been engaged in something like a project or a craft or art or anything where you lose track of time? Yeah, that's flow. That is where that is a really profound experience where you are, because basically the challenge of what you're doing is just probably slightly above your ability, so you're just engaging and getting it better, better, better. It's a wonderful feeling. Yeah. So I think that's really important. Like, can we help our young people learn to cultivate happiness? It's not going to drop in your lap like an apple off a tree. Life requires effort and to be deliberate. We will practice a golf swing over and over and over, but we won't practice good relationship skills.
That's true.
We won't practice how to give a presentation or how to mingle in a social setting in ways that are within my comfort level or slightly over my comfort level, but effective. We won't do that. We won't practice. It's interesting. And so this is a favorite quote, and I know there's a cuss word in it, but anyway. This is Brene Brown. Anyone familiar with her work? My favorite book of hers are The Gifts of Imperfection. She's a licensed clinical social worker. She teaches in Texas. And she talks about, she did a lot of research on what it means to be authentic and what it means to be happy. And her research was so distressing, she put it away, she put it away for 7 years and had a spiritual nervous breakdown until she was ready to go back to the research, because everything she had been telling herself was wrong. She studied people who are happy and satisfied. People who are happy are typically say, yeah, my stress level's high because I love my kids and they're in Boy Scouts and they're in theater and they're in this, and I love my wife and we have date night and I'm active in my church. It's stressful, but I'm doing all this stuff I love. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so she talks about the comparison and really wanting other people's approval. And she talks about, I want to be in the arena. Think about the gladiators. You're in the arena and everybody else is in the stands. She goes, I want to be in the arena. I want to be brave with my life. And when we make the choice to dare greatly, we sign up to get our asses kicked. We do. We're down there. We're doing it. And it's easy for the spectators in the arena and the seats to go, oh, bad move. That was a big mistake. You look foolish, right? I'd rather be in the arena. We can choose courage, we can choose comfort, but we can't have both, not at the same time. That's profound.
Yeah.
If our students understood, young people understood, get in there. You are going to get your ass kicked. You're going to get beat up. But it's a lot more fulfilling than sitting in the stands and criticizing everybody and not living a life, you know. And she does a lot about, you know, comparison is the thief of happiness. You know, we're too busy thinking, oh, that life looks better than mine, or I'm going to look foolish. You know, we have to be authentic. And she talks about perfectionism, and a lot of my students have it. You know what perfectionism? It's a hustle. It is a hustle to prove yourself, because perfect to you is going to look perfect to you. So who do I be perfect for today? It's a hustle. And it keeps us from living our authentic life. And my authentic life is going to look different than yours and yours and yours. And thank God, because guess what? I don't want to be an engineer. I don't want to be a minister. You know, that's not my calling. It's not my gift. But let's get in there and help each other be our best selves. And when a friend gets their butt kicked, we're there to say, you know, that's okay. You were great. You did good. You'll do better next time. So that was a very rapid journey through some of the materials that I really wanted to share with you. I hope it was helpful. I'm here to answer questions. I know, I guess I took up all the time, but typically, if you have questions, I'm not in a rush. If you're not, happy to answer any questions. Yes, please.
When you're working with college students and you're giving them all this good advice, what % of them actually take it and do something good with it?
You know, that's hard to know. And I was just saying, like, sometimes I'll get an email from a student that graduated 10 years ago. So you probably won't remember me, but this, you know, you had made it, this really helped. I didn't take it seriously at the time, but as I got older, I realized how helpful those sessions were. We don't know.
So you planted a few seeds and just hope they grow.
We did. And some you can really see the healing, because some students I will see pretty regularly through the whole 4 or 5 years they're at Berea. So I can see some tremendous growth in them, and that's of course really rewarding, but you don't always know. Yeah, and it's hard because remember, you know, as a clinician in a college, the therapy ends artificially. It ends when they graduate. Right. You know, which I kind of like, because boy, I can't imagine somebody wanting to see me for 20 years. I don't have that much good stuff to say, or help, or do. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you can come for a checkup, you know, or whatever, a booster, but yeah. But we don't always know. But we see, you know, because many students, they wouldn't graduate unless they had a safe place to sort of sort things out, you know. You know, it's very interesting. Most of the first year students who come in, they're happy, you know, and again, I'm overgeneralizing, but most of our students come from pretty chaotic backgrounds. And they're happy to be in college because they finally are out of that difficult situation. And then they come in my office and go, but how come I still feel crummy? It's because you're trying to make sense of it. Because that's how our brains work. You know, and so that can lead to some grief. You know, my mom will never be the mom I hope that I want her to be. You know, they make it to, you know, to the place where, but she did her best, and that's a good place to be. But there's stuff. There could be anger, there could be sadness, there could be grief. There's letting go of the hope that my dad will finally tell me he's proud of me, or stop drinking, or whatever.
Sue, you said something that, well, it was a statement, and I think we all can agree with it, that there's higher and higher demand for counseling services and therapy. Is that because this is more and more broken world, or are we just recognizing the needs better today than we did maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago or so?
Wow, I think it's a combination of all those things. And that, you know, I just feel, you know, like the world is, and not only is it more broken, we have more, that bad news is in our face all the time. We have more access, you know, to that information, you know. Like even my students we have 3 students who are from Ukraine. And part of therapy is really trying to get them to limit their news intake. It's too, you know, they can't do it, it's too distressing. It's not to put your head in the sand like an ostrich, but to limit, because what you can take psychologically. I think it's partly that. I think An interesting statistic. This is interesting. What's the most popular course that's ever been taught at Yale? It was on the news recently.
Taught in Yale.
Taught in Yale, the most popular course by far, in demand.
My kid went there, I don't know.
Hundreds of students want to take this course. Psychology of happiness.
She took that.
Did she take
She
that?
studied cognitive science at Yale.
Yeah, but yeah, that's the most popular course, and Lori Santos is the professor who developed that, and she's so passionate, she now has free online courses and has adapted the curriculum to younger students. And also, I just was listening to her, and in the last 20 years, the increase in there's been a 400% increase in the number of prescription written for antidepressants in this country in the last 20 years. 400%. Something's wrong. And Americans are horrifically unhappy.
Need to go to Finland, that's the happiest.
Is that we need to go to, there you have it, yeah.
Another question, of course, everybody who's working with people, whether you are a counselor or minister or helping people, I've been wondering many times, because I feel I'm lacking it, where in the world you are getting the wisdom to be one-on-one with somebody who needs help. Who needs help, may not know that he needs help, but who needs help. So where you draw your wisdom, where you draw your energy and passion and impulsiveness and whatever it takes to see 6-7 people a day.
Yeah, sometimes 6-7 people a day. Yeah, I've been asked that question a lot, particularly, I have friends that are in different fields, and, if I talk about, just in general, about the kinds of things that my students go through, they start crying. And they're like, how can you do it day in and day out? I think, for me, I had a relatively difficult childhood, relatively difficult, so I was always interested. I remember, stumbling my way in a psychology course to self-help books, and I started sending to my sister Lori, and Lori said, I'm not the only, effed up one in the family, so stop sending me this bullshit. I loved it. I thought it was explained so much, and she's like, I don't have time for that. Or I don't even want to know what I'm thinking, because it would be too distressing to get to know myself better. So, I guess I was just kind of wired that way, but that's not what I see when I sit across from somebody in pain. I see tremendous resiliency. I see tremendous, and all can't we at least create a safe space to be with them? I might not have all the answers. You don't have the answers when somebody died tragically, but we can create that space to sit. We can say, I care. I don't know right now. Let's figure this out together. And I do have a deep faith, like I was saying, this Holy Spirit, counselor of counselors. And if you don't think I'm ever going, okay, Holy Spirit, any time now would be good. Because I don't know what to say to this kid. I don't know where to go next, right? But I find a lot of joy in it. Especially this age group, because they're so young and there's so much ahead of them. And they've endured so much to even get to college. So that's what I see. And there are times when there's a student scheduled on my schedule, and I go, oh, please, not today, because they might be difficult or unpleasant. But boy, it's really hard to dislike somebody when they're vulnerable enough to share their pain.
Yeah.
So what do you need from this group, since you're out talking to us? What is it that you're looking for?
Well, I love the series that you're doing, how do you be aware of what's happening in the community? And, and I think as you encounter younger people, these young adults, are we paying attention? Are we noticing, are we able to talk, how do I say this? Are we noticing what's going on? Are we listening to them? I learn a lot from my students. Can we overlook the whole, they're always on their phone or whatever, can we, how do we maintain, boundaries?
Since COVID, we're not able to interact with them as much, so how can we now be a part of that?
Yeah, well, how did you used to interact with them then?
We had them in our house.
Okay, and you're not able to do that anymore? Oh, wow. Are there public gathering spaces sometimes, like a picnic or here, yeah?
Well, they're not, right now, we don't see very many college students crossing our doors.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because there's no, reason they can't anymore. That's what I mean. It's almost like they're still in COVID mentality. They're not restricted from coming here anymore.
The International Community Friendship Program died during COVID.
Yeah.
And it's not been resumed, and that's how mostly, initially you meet a student, and then you meet their friends, and then you
Yeah.
all eat together someplace or whatever, and since that program crashed and burned and hasn't been resumed yet.
And I think that was, within this community, we had a lot of people that, were hosts for the
Yeah.
international students. But through them, we made many, many other.
Yeah, many other friends, yeah. Because boy, a lot of our students need reparenting, like, and I'm at that place where not only do they say, oh, you're like Mama, I like my grandmother. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm surprised. Why hasn't that been resurrected or resumed or?
So
Who was in charge of
depend
it?
on you to get us
Who was
plugged
in
into
charge
the
of it?
international office. and
Yeah,
stuff
would
like
it be Kai Anderson? Do you know your contact
I
there?
know Kai.
Yeah,
Is
I
it
called this fall to see if I could get a student, and they said we're not doing that yet.
Huh,
Yeah, I think most of us have called and asked about that.
yeah.
Because this church was really involved in
Oh, I love that,
being a
yeah.
part of the international family.
Because-
Through the college.
And that breaks my heart because students are craving that.
Yes. they
My,
do.
my international, the students that, just to have a safe place to go.
Right.
And I know
You
many
have
of
a
you
list
would,
of names?
yeah, we should do it on the, just on our own. I don't understand that. I really
If
don't.
they're able to go out, let's make contact.
Pardon me?
If they're able to go out to campus, I'm willing to have them over.
Gosh, because I know also it's like some host families, that's where they go for holidays.
Right.
To get, because they can't afford, it's really expensive to stay on campus
Right.
and for holidays and so forth. Gosh, I don't know.
Sounds like some of your professors at Berea College need your counseling service. Open it up a little bit. Take a risk.
Take a risk. Wow, the students keep me busy, but I am retiring at the end of June.
Just go talk to the president. No president of the college, not the United States, just the college.
Yeah,
Just go talk to him and say, I think this program should be started up again because I see people in stress and I think they'd be out of stress if they had some
Or have
people to remember.
work stresses.
yeah, no, I will take it up. I mean, President Ruloff's leaving. We have a new president coming in.
There's nothing we can do.
That's the whole reason you're leaving then, the road. He's leaving.
No, we're not gonna get into all the reasons why. No, but because I love the students, I've loved, I'm not good at, it's, part of it is like, I feel like I'm a part of an old era. We were talking about how we used to get things done when does anyone remember Ellen Burke? She was active in the, yeah, okay, that was she was my part-time therapist. Boy, she was great, but was she a handful to manage. Oh, if you knew Ellen, you could really appreciate that. But we got things done, but it was not through policy and procedure. I'm just saying. I'll share one story about Ellen that I love. Okay, Berea College has a swim requirement. You have to pass swim. Well, one of Ellen's clients was underneath a coat rack over in Seabury because he